Hello, Sonic people. My name is Tori, and welcome back to my channel. I hope you're drinking your water, wearing your mask and sunscreen. Today, we are doing a recap and review of episode 5 through 10 of Love Next Door, or 엄마친구아들. I'm warning you now, I have good things to say and bad things to say. But this is going to be a long video. I want to thank everybody who's ever clicked through to one of my videos. I got my first 1,000 views. Yay! So I really appreciate that. If you are new to the channel, please come and join us. You get 2 videos a week from me. You get to listen to me chat. Isn't that fun? So go ahead and like and subscribe and comment, talk to me in the comment section. I feel like I'm talking into the ether, even though I see you and your likes, and I really appreciate it. I would love to hear from you what you have to say. So we are going to be doing a play-by-play of most episodes with my yabble in between. So let's go ahead and jump in. So we ended episode 4. How did we end episode 4? I think that was when we were dealing with grippe and all of that. So we jump into episode 5. At this point, Seung-hyo has not fully 100% recognize his feelings, and Seok-ryo is just doing her best, trying to get back in, her mother's good graces, trying to figure out what she wants to do with her life, and Seung-hyo's just there. So we open up episode 5 with a flashback of Seung-hyo sneaking into Seok-ryo's dorm when they were kids. This is when she's in America. They're fighting, of course. This is where he sees she has a boyfriend, and this is where I assume that he had folded all of his little feelings for her at this point, and she had a boyfriend. She's in the States, she's being a girl, hot girl summer, all that great stuff. Then we head back to Seung-hyo's office. I think they just got done with grippe, so they went shopping. They're going to Seung-hyo's office for her to cook, and I was like, here's where we're focused on cooking again. I was like, is this drama a food drama? It didn't say it was a food drama. It's turning out to be slightly a food drama. So Seok-ryo trips and Seung-hyo catches her. He calls her an habitual offender because at the end of episode 4, she hugged him. And so now they're doing another little romantic thing where he's catching her. And so he asked her, what was that hug about? And I was like, Scooby-Doo tilt. And it's crazy because she ignores him, and this is a weird, in my opinion, right now. I have beef with the writing in this story, just so you know, because we haven't gotten the switch from Seok-ryo. Seok-ryo has not shown that she has any feelings for Seung-hyo that are not that of a best friend, but now all of a sudden she hugged him. She was like, it was a hug, I was happy for you. That would have been easy to say and move on. I don't know, it felt an odd beat to me. So Seung-hyo looks into Seok-ryo's eyes, and his heart starts to beat. And this is also where I thought this was a weird beat, because we just had the hug and we just had another romantic moment where he fell into her arms. This is where the show is blatantly showing us that the switch from friend to a love interest is happening for Seung-hyo. And I was like, that's weird and odd, considering that he wasn't having heartbeats the 2 other times when they were in what I believe to be much more intimate settings. I don't know. They're having dinner. Moeum shows up. I keep calling her Moeum. That's not her name. Moeum shows up. It's episode 5, and I finally feel like we're using Moeum to a better extent, where she's also talking with Seok-ryo about her feelings and everything like that. We learn that Moeum's father passed away, and her grandmother blamed Moeum's mother for his death. And during this scene, I was kind of thinking, I said, is this drama focusing on the truth of busy life, not giving the employed friends, freedom to chill? Or is the script misusing characters and timing? Because I was lacking the conversations between Moeum and Seok-ryo in the earlier episodes. If you've watched my reactions, if you haven't watched my reactions, here's a playlist. But yeah, that was an odd beat. But during this conversation, we hear Moeum and Seok-ryo talking about Seok-ryo's fiance and seeing her wedding pictures. And then we go to a scene that isn't touched on until much later episodes, that you almost forget it. 2 vloggers go to Seok-ryo's daddy's restaurant, and they put focus on the scene, and I was just like, that didn't translate any information to us. That didn't give us anything. I don't know what the point of that was. And then we hop back over to our main couple, where Seung-hyo's ex basically shows up out of the blue. She comes around and hugs him, and it's homegirl. So Ji-hae is playing a cameo as Seung-hyo's ex, and she shows up and she invites everyone to her studio to discuss a project that she wants to do with Seung-hyo. Seung-hyo and Seok-ryo's dad get drunk, and Seung-hyo stays the night at Seok-ryo's house. I don't understand why he's drinking with the dad and not someone more of his age, Dong-jin. This is probably the first time that I should have put in my notes. I was like, does Seung-hyo have any other friends besides Seokryeo and Moem. Like, he doesn't have any male friends, like, besides his boss. Not his boss, his business partner. I just thought it was odd for him to be drinking with her dad. Like, I get it that he was basically raised in their house and he feels like a son, but I felt like it would have made much more sense for him to be drinking with Dongjin. The next morning, Seokryeo goes to wake up who she thinks is Dongjin, and it turns out to be a shirtless Sunghyo. And another romantic moment, Dongjin walks in on them in a suspicious position, and in the process of stopping him from tattletelling, Sunghyo ends up stubbing his toe and spraining it, basically, which just forces Seokryeo to drive him to the ex's workshop. I thought this was dumb. I felt like there was easier ways to get Seokryeo to go to the ex's workshop with Sunghyo. Like, she was the one who was helping them with grip, so it would have been easy for the boss to extend an invitation. Just as much as I hate when romantic plots hurt the female lead to then move the plot forward, I don't like it when they do it to the male lead either. I felt like there was much more easier way to do that. I did write jealousy or responsibility. I don't know what Seokryo's motivation. I don't know what Seokryo's motivation was to then take Sunghyo to this workshop, but she does. In the acts, we end up finding out that the ex had tricked everybody into coming to her workshop to basically help her family traditionally make Korean condiments. I thought it was very good of the plot to utilize the ex workshop to further Seokryo's dream. I said that's what I thought up until this point. I did think up until this point it was good that they were using the ex, achieving all her dreams and, being in a place where it's all about food and cooking. I thought it was a really good use of the plot until I got to the next episode. So we'll get there in a second. Seokryeo walks in on the ex and Sunghyo in a ghost-esque scene. This is where the pacing of the drama really lost me, because now all of a sudden I feel like they're trying to make Seokryeo fit Sunghyo's pacing of the switch from friends to love interest. Like, before this, I personally did not feel that Seokryeo had any romantic feelings towards Sunghyo at all. And so for them to be like, oh, but she sees them, intimately making ceramic pottery together, she's like, what is this I'm feeling? And I'm like, even if that was her spark for the switch to happen, I felt like it was poorly written and poorly inserted into the story, because I didn't feel any of that tension when I watched that. So back at their home city, Moem gets a call from 911, and it ends up being a little girl who was looking for crop circles, 4-leaf clovers that she met early in the story. She has a high fever and her nanny left her at home while she was asleep, which is wild. I said the nanny needs to be fired. We don't leave sick children by themselves, but it is good to know that Yeondu, who's the name of the baby girl, Yeondu was, taught well by her parents that if she feels like she's in danger, she calls 911. So, of course, like in most romantic story plots, the female lead makes a human-like mistake of wanting to be overly helpful, and she's helping the ex move this giant pot that they use to ferment condiments. And as she's helping her push the cart, the thing falls, and so does she. And instead of Sunghyo being concerned for her, he immediately berates her and calls her embarrassing. Now, my mother does something similar to this. When I was younger, well, even now, not now, but definitely when I was in high school, around early college age, I would trip or fall or almost hurt myself. And the first thing she did was call my name. She'd be like, Tori. And I know that this is a knee-jerk reaction for her as surprise, but to the person who is fallen or hurt or tripped or something, it feels embarrassing. It feels like she was scolding me, and I had to verbally tell her that. She was like, oh, well, that's not what I meant. I was like, okay, great, I know that's not what you meant, but that's what it feels like. And that's exactly what Sunghyo is doing when this happens. He goes up to her, tells her to stop being embarrassing, stop helping, embarrassing her in front of the ex. And most of the time when this knee-jerk reaction happens, it needs to be followed up by gentle and kind phrasing to the person that you are yelling at. Even if you're like, oh my God, are you, oh my God, call the name, are you hurt? Are you okay? But instead he's just being mean to her. And I know some people won't see that as being mean. It's very unattractive. That's just one of the unattractive things that Sunghyo will continue to do as we go through this recap. If this was a different drama, the male lead definitely would have gone to her and checked on her. The drama is playing up this he's being mean to you because he likes you trope, which I thought that we had gotten over, but I have to, even as a 10-year plus K-drama fan, I'd be hoping for progress when it comes to certain tropes, or the throwing of certain tropes away. But apparently that's not what we're doing in this drama. It's just really regressive to see. Is it going to change ever in K-drama plots? Probably not. We will continue to see male leads display problematic behavior in the name of love. So this is where my desire for healthily obsessed men truly comes in, and I'll get into that later. Moem scolds Yeondu's dad for leaving his daughter alone. She points out that when she met Yeondu, she was also alone. Now, I know in South Korea, kids are a little bit more free to traipse around their communities. I would definitely be concerned in the States of leaving my child alone at the park, but I also saw whole gaggles of children get on subways when I was in South Korea, but that was also in 2017, so I do not know how the community is at this point. I thought it was kind of harsh. Like, I get that she was worried for the child, but also, did you like ask the facts? Did you figure out that she had a nanny and the nanny wasn't there? He was at work. But this is the point where I definitely felt like the second lead couple story was much more interesting, considering the stigma around single parenthood, single motherhood, particularly in South Korea. So seeing a single father is not always easy or used a lot in K-dramas. So, and I would love more non-traditional parenting stories in South Korea, but you just have to wait and see what comes up. So the ex tells Sung-hyo that she felt like she was dumped when she was the one who initiated their breakup, that she thought that she was jealous of seeing Sung-suk, that's what I call them, their names together, Sung-suk together, because the jar actually had a crack in it. And so there was no need for him to be that fierce with her, embarrass her or whatever. But instead of apologizing like a grown adult would, Sung-hyo washes her soiled clothes and leaves it out to dry. And then they go to find soy sauce in the middle of the night, and this is when Sung-hyo comes to the realization that there was no way that he could not fall in love with Seok-ryo. And while she realizes that her dream is cooking, I really did like the line where she's like, the soy sauce jar is filled with stars, and she goes into all the dishes that she can make with the soy sauce. I thought it was really nice. At this end of episode 5, we're gonna do this for every episode. My annoyed meter is at like 6. I'm not 100% fan of other characters being the light bulb for main characters to realize their feelings for each other. So I don't like the fact that it was Sung-hyo's ex being like, well, when you're with her, you smile. And I'm like, I wish you would have came to that realization on your own. I feel like it would have made Sung-hyo's character a little bit more deeper than the surface level that I feel for him at the point. At this point, Sung-hyo's feelings for Seok-ryo do not feel genuine because the drama chose to focus on him denying his feelings the whole episode while he was being, snappy at her, rather than letting the character sit in his own emotions to recognize them. And because what happened in the episode, besides the ex telling him that he smiles when he's with her, what has happened so far that tells me that Sung-hyo is in love with Seok-ryo? Because he washed her soiled clothes, he was being a dick. I was like, he was being a so there's been nothing actively done by Sung-hyo, in my opinion, at this point in time, that tells me that he's madly in love with Seok-ryo. And then we get into episode 6. So we start off with a recap of Sung-hyo remembering all of Seok-ryo's first, the first time she rode her tricycle, the first time she lost a tooth, the first time she proposed to a guy. The drama wants us to be really romantic. It doesn't feel that way to me. Seok-ryo goes to deliver side dishes, and she busts into Sung-hyo's room without knocking, which means to me that means that the switch for Seok-ryo has not gone off yet, because she's not being like, oh, I'm gonna walk to the room of a man I'm interested in. She's like, oh no, this is my best friend's room. I come in here all the time. Let me bust in. So she finds the letter that was in the time capsule. She reads it. She finds out that Sung-hyo had feelings for her in high school. He walks over after. Is he shirtless in this thing? I don't know. After coming out of the shower, and takes the letter from her and rips in half. I think he does the most cliche male thing ever. He tells her it was a joke. And I know they're supposed to act like kids when they're around each other. Like, that's part of the charm of childhood. Friends to lovers trope is that they will always like go back to a more innocent time, a more childish time in their personalities when they're around that person. But it's just eye rolls worthy at this point. Seok-ryo reminisces about being a kid at her parents' restaurant with her father, who is not the happiest because he doesn't want her to be a chef. It seems like he opened a restaurant. He was a famous chef at a hotel, opened up a restaurant, and the restaurant didn't do well. And so now he's running the tteokbokki house. And so he doesn't want her to be a cook. She also reminisces about her old food channel, which in retrospect is weird because she's out here looking for a dream, but she looked like she was doing YouTube semi-professionally. Like, she had a whole camera, a whole like really nice kitchen setup. Sung-hyo, of course, becomes awkward around Seok-ryo. The ex offers to be used by Sung-hyo to get to Seok-ryo, which I appreciate not being a completely toxic ex. So far, the story has done really great with not making the exes the overdramatic and the catalyst of everything that's happened in the story, which is refreshing. Seok-ryo signs up for cooking classes. We're finally getting more of the girls, of her and Moem talking. And then Sung-hyo finally has a male friend in the reporter. So him and the reporter meet like at night somewhere in their neighborhood and they start talking. There was a few things about the scene that I really love. They aren't hiding the fact that he's a single father. And Sung-yo has a chance to finally talk about his feelings, even though he's like, oh, it's a friend of a friend. I feel like it's kind of a superficial way to use the reporter, but I understand that some people are better at talking to strangers about what's happening in their life than the people closest to them, which then would just go into the root of the original plot. The original core of the story is missing some elements in character choice that would supplement Sung-yo not having a male best friend, or even the fact that like you could have just made the reporter, who is a classmate that moved away. We would continue with the theme of childhood lovers to friends, but we'll get there later. So we find out that Sung-yo had a hard time dealing with his feelings for Seok-ryo because he thought they would end their friendship if he ever told her. And then they zoom out and Moom is listening on the other side of the wall because her and the reporter are neighbors. I burst out laughing. That was actually very funny. Of course, we confirmed that Moom had already known about Sung-hyo's feelings because she did the time capsule when they were still in high school, took out her letter and read the other two. Sung-seok is still being weird around each other. Seok-ryo attends her first cooking class. Sung-hyo goes out with former coworkers and he witnesses Seok-ryo's daddy escorting a drunk woman home. Now, this is the point where I was really upset about the writing. And while this is probably titled Mediocre Writing Makes Me Angrier Than Bad Writing, or Mediocre Writing versus Bad Writing, I don't know what the title is going to be yet, but Jesus Christ. This is where the story starts to it feels like a first draft, maybe even a second draft, but it doesn't feel like a final draft of a story. Because he witnessed the dad and the woman, he has a flashback to when he was a child, and you see his mother getting in the car with her colleague, and the drama is hinting at that, maybe she had an affair, and I'm not going to believe that yet until we see the rest of the story, but of course the child in him is probably what believe that. Sung-hyo waits for Seok-ryo's daddy to come home, and he's like, I saw you with this woman. And then they cut away and then cut back to the end of their conversation. And the dad is like, well, I'm sorry you had to see me like this. He said that was a shame, even though he's decided to do something. We don't know what they're talking about. The Lavender crew had been on vacation to like a temple, and so they come back and they kind of rile mom up, being like, oh, the shop's not been open. She had a bill that was supposed to go through, but there wasn't enough funds in the account. And so she, of course, is under the assumption that her husband might be cheating on her while she's out of town. But alas, ladies and gentlemen, it's not cheating. He took out a loan. A loan? Oops. So what's going on with that? We don't know. Moom and the reporter running to each other again. They have dinner together. I do not like a part of Moom's characterization is her jumping to conclusions quickly without finding all the facts. And I found this scene kind of condescending in its writing because she's like, you're here again. Where's Yeondu? And he's like, my child's at camp. She's like, oh, camp. But she's like, oh, but you're a good father because Yeondu know what to do when she was in danger. But I was like, why is she immediately jumping to the fact that he might be a bad father for just being outside without his child? I didn't like that. They kind of redeemed it. I don't hate Moon for it. I just thought that was very weird writing. This is where I wrote 45 minutes into this. How many minutes was this episode? I didn't write it, but it was definitely over an hour. 45 minutes into this, and I realized nothing exciting has happened so far in this episode. And then this is where I start to get absolutely upset because I'm just yelling in caps in my notes at this point. This is what the vloggers were for? Are you kidding me? So apparently the vloggers had scammed Seok-ryo's dad and are forcing him to pay back a loan for a fake watch that they made him ruin. Basically, this is where I felt like the writing was really, really mediocre because there's a good story in here. There is a decent story within this plot, but because of the way it's written, it feels like a script that I would have got in college during a free writing assignment. I would have been like, oh, this is good, but there are parts missing and parts that don't make sense. And mediocre writing is always about how there's decency in it, but you have to dig through all this other stuff. So I was very upset because I feel like using the vloggers and then everything that happens after we find about the scam and the vloggers was a misuse of those plot points and how you write an episode to create tension. Because one, I had forgotten about the vloggers by this time. There was nothing between the vloggers popping up in episode 5 and then us learning about the scam in episode 6 that hinted that something was wrong. There wasn't anything, and it doesn't tie in to the theme of reality versus dreams, right? Capitalism versus dreams, which I was thinking was the theme and the motif of the story, yes? And it so easily could have. You know what? It so easily could have. I'm going to show you how easily it could have been. 1 second. This is 110% the teacher in me. And I'm going to show you how, in my opinion, this could have been completely different, okay? This, ladies and gentlemen, is a 3-act structure. It is taught in every single creative writing class, usually screenwriting classes, but it is a basic setup for an episode or even a story, if you must, about how to create a story with good climax and good tension, which I do not think this plot is doing. They even teach this in high school, yes? So first, we have Act 1. This is where you're beginning of your story. This is the setup, right? Enticing incident is the problem that happens. Therefore, the enticing incident is a problem that we have to solve by the end of the episode. So, what is our enticing incident? The vloggers scam dad. They scam dad. It's not good. He has to pay this money. He doesn't have this money. His wife's out of town. He doesn't know what to do. Not talking to his kids. Great. Second thoughts. We can introduce the drinking with Sung-hyo's dad. I know that happened in earlier episodes, but imagine if we had put it in this episode where he's drinking with Sung-hyo's dad. He mentions money. He mentions being a failure. He mentions feeling like he's not the head of his family, right? He starts to say something to mom before her trip, right? Before she leaves her trip. These are the second thoughts that are happening, but he decides against it. He wants to be dad. He wants to be the man of the family, right? We can use Dongjin for something that makes sense and have him follow dad in the streets and see him passing the store and not going to work. He's like, that's odd. My dad goes to work this time. He's not going to work at this time. I wonder what could happen. Then we have Act 2, the confrontation. We already have our problem. That is already going on with the scammers. He's taking out money. He's taking out a loan. Here's the obstacles. Obstacle 1. Shop is closed. Dad is not there. Sukyo goes to the shop. Her dad's not there. She opens it up. We already used that. See how we can just edit that as obstacle 1? Then we have obstacle 2. Sung-hyo spots dad with a drunk woman. See how that's something already written in the script, but we're just reorganizing it? Obstacle 3. Dongjin mentions something to Sung-hyo or Sukyo. It seems like he has a better relationship with Sung-hyo. It would make sense that he mentioned this. We can even make this obstacle 3 and not obstacle 2. Disaster. Mom tries to buy something on the trip. The card is declined, right? Or she sees the bill. And then she comes home, and that's when the Lavender gang is like, well, people have been saying the store hasn't been open. They want to get kimbap or whatever. Or mom returns home, and Sakura mentions that dad has been acting weird. I want you to notice how Sakura is involved in this part of the plot. It's not something that's happening off screen. It's not something that is just happening as a plot device with no meaning like it is currently in the written plot. It's happening because Sokyo is the focus of our story, and Sokyo needs to be around when things happen, yes? Climax, we find out that dad took out a loan and got scammed. Oh my gosh, she hears a speech about her dad, him being a failure and cooking and all of this, and hears her parents argue, and now she's still constantly thinking about her own dreams and the sacrifices her parents have made. And then we're at Act 3. This is descending action. You said this descending action, there's still stuff happening in this story. There's still stuff that creates tension, wrap up. Act 3, climax. Sung-hyo catching the scammers with Sukro there to witness it. This is a part of the story that also very much upset me, because why is Sung-hyo doing something that I would consider very cool of a male lead to do? Why was the female lead that is eventually going to fall in love with him not there at the scene where he's like, this watch? Biff bam, I have this watch. I know you're a scammer. Evidence pops up on evidence pops up on wall. That is such an easy plot to make for Sukyo Spark or Sukyo Switch to be like, I've always looked at this kid as the annoying little kid that I took care of when we were younger, but he's kind of manly. He's kind of in charge. That's kind of attractive. But we don't do any of that. He does this. The reporter goes to help him, And the most important thing is mom and dad have this really good moment where she's talking to him about, you can't look down on yourself for being a cook. You've done so much for our family. The snacks that you sell at our shop have fed our family. Why was that speech given to Sokyo's dad, but not in front of Sokyo? When Sokyo's the one looking for her dreams. When the theme and the motif of this story from the beginning to this point, is dreams versus reality. It is the reality of Sakura being a good student and being a tech person, but loving cooking. And then she could hear her mother be like, your cooking fed us and kept us warm and kept us off the streets. Wouldn't that have been a greater plot point? Wouldn't that have been the greater catalyst to happen before Sukuro goes to Sung-hyo's ex's place and realizes that she wants to cook? after hearing her mother and father talk about cooking, after being at that workshop and working with the traditional Korean condiments, she's like, oh my God, my dream was in front of me all along. I want to cook. Like I said, I feel like mediocre scripts rile me up more than bad writing, because bad writing could just be funny and fun, but there's nothing funny and fun about this when it can be easily fixed in my book. Those are the things that get me upset more than anything. Anyway, Sung-yeol and the reporter chase the scammers down. One of the scammers cross the street. Suk-yeol confronts him. He knocks her down. She has a nosebleed. I wonder why she has a nosebleed. They're coming back from the police station, and Sung-yeol tells Suk-yeol as they are leaving the police station that she should not be living in the past. They're adults who should be in the present now. And then we get to the scene that I think Suk-yeol should have witnessed, of mom being like, hey, your dreams might have not worked out the way you were, but you were a great head of this family. Great. So, Sung-yeol says a thing about them being adults, which means the switch for him from friend to love interest is definitely at 100%. Suk-yeol tosses and turns all night. Suk-yeol brings Sung-yeol the first dish he has from our cooking class, which was the first thing he ate coming back from Paris to Korea. And here is where I don't want nobody to fall in love. Here is where the unattractive reign of Sung-yeol begins and will, I think, continue for the rest of the series. He's acting like a child, and acting like a child in the worst way possible. Man-child. Instead of being thankful or even cordial with Suk-yeol, Sung-yeol goes into a whole mean-ass diatribe about them not being kids, asking her why she remembers, scolding her just because he is afraid of losing her. And if this is how he's going to act every time he's confronted with his feelings, Suk-yeol deserves better. He accuses her of following her, which is wild, and then they try to make it romantic. He's like, I'm going crazy over you, which is not an excuse for you to say mean stuff to people. It's not an excuse for you to be a d***. Of course, there are far worse Korean drama male lead characters. And even then, they never make up to the female lead for ever saying rude things to them. The drama just writes it off as like, oh, this is how he loves her, and we should love that. And I don't. But once again, the drama wants us to accept what I think is problematic behavior as just a form of affection. And then at the end of the episode, Suk-yeol also saying that she knows all of Sung-yeol's first, but she never knew who his first love was. She runs after him and demands an answer for what he meant by make her crazy, and they end the episode. And my comment for that was the first 40 minutes of this 81-minute episode was for nothing. I was literally on my phone while watching and writing the script, and that's just how disengaging the plot is at this point. And you're gonna ask me, Tori, I thought you dropped dramas. I thought we know better. I do drop dramas, but I'm at this point, it's masochism because I'm looking at this cast and their caliber of acting, and I'm just like, the cast, the waste, and I click on an episode every week just hoping that something will be better, and it hasn't been. But we're gonna stick it out. We're gonna watch it through. So now we're at episode 7. Suk-yeol confronts Sung-yeol about what he meant by driving me crazy. And just as he's about to answer, our long-awaited ex-fiance shows up. This man plays somebody's dead ex something all the time. I want better for him. The actor who plays the ex-fiance. Sung-yeol is confrontational with this man from the jump, and so is dad, because of course now we're overusing the K-drama trope of people just walking in on conversations, because mom, dad, and Dongjin walk over, and dad is just like, I'm about to kill this man. It's like, mom's like, not here in the streets. Let's go home. And so they go home. She feeds him, and then she's like, what actually happened? Because my daughter's saying that she cheated on you, and I don't believe that. And of course, we confirmed that Suk-yeol did not cheat on her ex. Thank God. But I wonder what could have possibly happened between the two of them. I wonder what could have possibly happened to make two people who were engaged to get married actually meet each other cordially. She's like actually kind of protecting him. Oh my God, whatever could have happened. So, they leave the house, because mom is like, oh, she didn't cheat. You guys are going to tell us what's up. I'm ready to hurt you too. Anyway, Suk-yeol then confronts her ex outside of the house, saying that they have no longer love, it's just a habit. And also, Sung-yeol was, of course, waiting outside with Moen and told her that the ex was here. Mom still thinks the ex-fiance has a chance, but dad is against it. Suk-yeol and Moen spend the night together, and Suk-yeol says that she feels like her heart is going to burst out of her chest every time she sees her ex. She still loves him, but she thought it was better that they end the relationship, which is like understandable. Sometimes you meet people, right people, wrong time type of thing, and I can only assume that's what's happening between the two of them. The next morning, Sukro's mom makes her get dressed up and get pretty because her ex is outside waiting for her, but Sung-hyo is there to save the day and, drives her away to class on a bike. Glad to see that Sakura is treating him like the rude brat that he's beating at this point. His attitude doesn't change quickly. This is episode 7. And I was like, this is episode 7. And I was just like, if his attitude doesn't change quick enough, I'm not going to enjoy watching Jung play this character. And it also made me wish that we had friends to lovers story where they turn from best friend to obsessed boyfriend was much smoother. That's just kind of what I want in my male leads, but what do you want in your male leads? What is the smooth transition from childhood friends to lovers? Molim says a citizen in front of Yeondu and her daddy, and Yeondu gains a girl crush. This made me realize that I don't get to see a lot of young girls idolized for older women in their life, and I need more of that representation. That was a really cute, adorable scene. So Sukuro's mom goes to the Lavender Squad for guidance. The ex-fiance tries to talk to Sukuro more, but he's like, I was only thinking about myself. I should have been more understanding. She was like, no, you were understanding enough. It was hard for the both of us. And I'm just like, what is happening? They're not telling us anything. What could have possibly gone on between the two of them? And then Yeondu, being the blessed child she is, puts a band-aid on Mom's face, and the reporter offers to drive her home. Mom then tells the reporter about her ideal type being the mud flag guy, and he has on the shirt, and this is like an adorable scene, which also pisses me off because that means the writer is capable of writing adorable, palpable, interesting stories, and they're choosing to write the story for Sukuro and Sung-hyo because I feel like they think it's interesting. I feel like they have lost their way in that plot. Oh God. So Mom of course doesn't think it's him at first, but she keeps talking to herself until realizing that he was the one that moved all the cars on that day. Next, we have Sukuro confronts her mom about setting her up with her ex. Then we go into a scene which is very bad taste. And I know this scene was all over social media when this episode aired. But they start the scene as Sukuro coming out of her house. She runs into Sung-hyo. Sung-hyo's like, what are you doing at night? It's really dangerous, right? She's like, whatever, I'm going to the convenience store. She doesn't want to be in the house. She starts to walk away. And then she starts to hear and feel somebody behind her. So what does she do in a normal ass fashion? Run away. And as she runs away, she turns back and realizes that it's Sung-hyo. And Sung-hyo then tells her, wow, you're overreacting. Pick a side. This is what I mean by contradictories. You can't have a character be like, hey, it's dangerous at night, be careful. Then scare her and then get upset at her for being scared out in the middle of the night. Pick one. Is it dangerous to walk in South Korea at night, or is it not? Because if it's dangerous, Sung-hyo should have been the one to announce himself that, hey, you don't have to run, it's me. Why are we blaming Sukuro for her natural ass reaction to hightail it out of there and not be assaulted or followed by someone in the middle of the night? This is such in bad taste, especially with the rise of femicide in South Korea at the moment. It was just like, it was so unnecessary. And what was even the point of the scene? Because it's not like Sung-hyo saved her from anybody. That would have been a much better plot. It's not like Sung-hyo, like in most romantic tropes, they would have scared her in the middle, they would have saved her. Maybe I would have liked him more. Instead, they use this as a scene for them to go back and forth about their feelings or whatnot. And of course, Love Next Door is not the first K-drama to give their female lead small T-trauma in the name of plot devices, but it's always going to be in bad taste to me. That scene did absolutely nothing for the plot, but make me hate Sung-hyo more because you're minimizing the feelings of a woman alone at night by herself after you just warned her. On the one hand, you can call people sensitive for overthinking about this plot, but I think when media continues to minimize these things, when it happens in real life, people also minimize those situations. And even if the scene isn't meant to be like it's being interpreted by me, even if the scene is not meant to be interpreted as I am interpreting it, small little things like that do have an impact on society, whether people realize it or not. So they have a confrontation. The whole scene happens. Sukuro then takes on the mantle of continuing the awkward atmosphere between them by stopping Sung-hyo from explaining his outburst from the other night. And the scene continues to disgust me further by Sung-hyo saying to her, well, you don't have to be worried, I'm walking behind you now. You were walking behind her in the first place. He doesn't apologize for scaring her. He doesn't be like, I'm sorry I followed you because it's dangerous. It's just we're supposed to feel romantic intentions for him now following her home with her knowledge. You scared her in the first place. Do I have to say that most assaults on people are from people they know? No? Okay. Anywho, Moam is beginning to feel the flutterings of first like for Yeonju's daddy. Sung-hyo and his ex run into Seokro and her ex at a restaurant. Sung-hyo is, of course, extremely irritated and still being a child, even though he's the one constantly complaining to Seokro, being like, we shouldn't be stuck in the past. We're not children anymore. Ooh, let me have a pissing match with your ex at this restaurant. Meanwhile, Sung-hyo's mom is sad because no one remembers her birthday. But of course, the Lavender Squad has her covered. I feel like Sung-hyo's mother is also an easy person to rope into the overall theme and motif of the story of dreams versus reality. You know, her being a working diplomat and all. But we'll see how the story uses that in episode 11 through 16. If they'll use it at all through episode 11 and 16. The story likes to emphasize to us that no matter how awkward Sung-hyo and Seokro are with each other, that they are constantly doing stuff for each other behind the scenes. Sung-hyo finds out from his teacher that Seokro has been checking up on the status of him winning the bid to redo their school or whatever. This is when Sung-hyo comes to the conclusion that he should dive in head first when it comes to Seokro and runs to confess to her. Sung-hyo's daddy brings home flowers for his wife for her birthday, but stops when she sees her and her coworker outside their house together. Sung-hyo finally confesses to Seokro, and that is the end of episode 7. I was not particularly a fan of the delivery of Han's scene for the confession scene. It's probably written in Sung-hyo's character bio that his love for Seokro is kind of like a warm flame and not hot lava. You know, it's not burning and passionate. I didn't feel much from this confession, but that might also be to the fact that I was over the writing and the characters at this point in time. But it does have to say that I think that this writer is better at writing dialogue between two characters, which gives off natural chemistry, whereas these big emotional love scenes and stuff like that aren't coming off as emotional and lovely as they should be, in my opinion. Everything just felt really flat in that confession scene. Now we're at episode 8. We're at episode 8. We open up on the confession scene. It was sweet. I actually wrote that the I like you was a sweet, to the point kind of declaration. Seokro was practicing cooking, so Seokro burns her hand touching a hot pot, and Sung-hyo has a chance to continue explaining how he is always worried about her and asks Seokro to think how she feels about him. He'll wait since she just broke up with her ex. Meanwhile, Sung-hyo's mom comes home to find no one waiting for her at home, in particular her husband. Then she goes to open Sung-hyo's gift to her, and it's the same necklace he probably bought her the year before. This scene made me want to cry. The actress who plays his mother, whose name is slipping my mind right now, Jang Yeon-nam, is a fantastic actress, and I was ready. I had tears in my eyes watching her look at herself in the mirror and touch that necklace. I was like, ooh. It just made me think maybe she has also gone through depression and her child or her husband wasn't there for her because her husband is busy and she's always overseas. And it just, a lot of thoughts flew by in that one moment, and that is a testament to that acting. During this scene, I also came to the conclusion that Sung-hyo's family gives me that they're searching for each other in the darkness. Like, they all want to be close, but they don't know the first steps into being close to each other. But it also makes me understand Sung-hyo's avoidant personality, or his personality of saying things he doesn't mean out of goodwill or whatever, because his father returns to work instead of confronting his wife and the coworker together. This drama is making it like she had an affair, but I still don't believe that. I feel like it might just be interpretation from third party, i.e. Sung-hyo and his dad. But we'll see. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe she did have an affair. Maybe that would be interesting, actually. Then we find out, surprise, surprise, Seokro might have liked Sung-hyo first. Oh my god. I know this is part of, I know this is part of the childhood friends to lovers trope, that they've loved each other all along. Ugh, I don't know. I wanted it differently. I do like Sung-hyo's little freak out scenes. He is me, I am him. People who talk to themselves. I see you, you're loved. Sung-seok both have this back and forth at their windows, trying to figure out if they should talk to one another. But of course, morning comes with no confrontation. Sung-hyo's parents continue to lengthen their Cold War. They're not talking to each other. Or if they're talking to each other, they're being very curt about it. Seokro dresses up to go give Sung-hyo back his tie. Dongjin is trying to get his mother to invest in him being an influencer. This is also where I'm getting really upset with the writing, because if Dongjin and Seokro have always had this kind of sibling rivalry, this little thing about Dongjin never being 100% committed to the things that he tries in life. Why wasn't that in earlier episodes? Why? It just gave off regular back and forth sibling banter, but obviously as we go to look at episode 9 and 10, we will understand that it's much deeper than that. But there were no seeds of that until now. Like right before the climax of, brother and sister. And that could have easily been fixed, but I digress. Of course, the two of them, Dongjin wants his mother to invest in him being an influencer. Sokuro obviously berates him and being like, are you out of your mind? And then Seung-seok meet outside, and of course the two of them are working hard not to be awkward. Seung-hyo's cheesy little line was sort of cute where he was like, well, I have to be buried in this tie. I was like, there's potential there, hopefully. I thought it was. Sokuro confirms with Seung-hyo if she could answer him later, and they both go to the convenience store to find a good expiration date. The switch for me at this point for Sokuro is definitely like at 80%. She's definitely like feeling the pull towards Seung-hyo from friend to lover. The reporter, I keep calling him the reporter. What is his character's name? Hang Dan-ho. He's Yeonju's daddy. Anyway, Yeonju's daddy is doing a paramedic special at Moon's job. Sukuro's mom gets a text from her ex-fiance wanting to meet up to find out what happened or to just talk about, what happened. And dad sees her meeting with him, which she confronts mom about later. Seung-hyo gives Sokuro 11 days to give him an answer. Mom and dad fight since mom is still hell-bent on sending her daughter back to the U.S. so she is not a failure, which relatively ties very well into the dream versus reality thing. Her mother's like, you did all this hard work. And of course, part of her reasoning is selfishing, but it's like, you shouldn't give it all up. You should go back to the U.S., all that good stuff. And I think this is also a very good display. Well, if the writing was better, it would have been a very good display on how different generations think about careers, because I feel like our generation, millennials and Gen Z, definitely the younger millennials and Gen Z, don't believe we have to work for a career until the day we die. Like, you don't have to work in one career for 40 years. A lot of millennials and Gen Z hop jobs, hop industries to build up their portfolios and things like that. So I feel like that is also a generational thing between mom and dad and Sokuro. Seung-seok's dads do some day drinking and they comfort each other. I was very annoyed with this scene because it's random comedy that has nothing to do with the plot. Like, of course, part of it is like Seung-hyo's dad being like, oh, Lily of the Valley is so hard to find, but I found them. And he's complaining about his wife. But then the little whole CGI scene where Sokura's dad is the one who is climbing up the side of the mountain to get Lily of the Valley. Wouldn't that have made more sense if it was Seung-hyo's dad? It would, hint to us that that his wife is just always out of reach for him. And I don't think this is how comedy is supposed to be used in this plot. So Dongjin is still on the investment BS. Sokuro comes to stop him and we find out that he had a hole in his heart and this is why his mother has babied him his whole life. And Sokuro makes the offhand comment, is being sick that big of a deal, especially when the hole in his heart closed up on its own. So the ex-fiance says he's going to start over with Sokuro. He's like always outside of her class, like wanting to go eat, talk to her and all this stuff. Seung-hyo tells his ex he confessed to Sokuro, and because he's like, I don't love her because she's a woman. I love her because she's Sokuro. And I feel like that was supposed to be I feel like that was supposed to be an extremely romantic line, and I was just like, of course you love her because she's her and not just because she's a woman. But I think it's because the ex had made the comment, this is why women and men can't be friends. But whatever. Dongjin invites Seung-hyo to talk to Sukuro's mom. And that's when Sukuro's mom confronts her about Cook. Her parents are disappointed. I get it. She worked so hard. She was a really good student. They feel like it's a waste of her talent for her to start cooking. And they don't want her to be poor like they were. But at the end of the day, it's her life, not theirs. Right? And then the best scene out of the whole drama so far, one of the top 5 scenes out of the whole drama so far, Sukuro goes off on her parents about how they treat her differently versus they treat her brother. And as great as the scene was, the emotional burst was like very vindicating to watch, but I wish they would have planted the seeds in earlier episodes about the difference, the way they treat the siblings. It wasn't obvious enough to me. There was a lot of time in this script to use Dongjin. Like, if you watch my reactions of the first 4 episodes, I kept saying, what is the purpose of Dongjin? Why is he there? He's not being used in this plot whatsoever. And even when they throw in these scenes where he's like supposed to be falling, I guess, romantically in love with the girl that works at Sung-hyo's office. I'm like, it's pointless to this plot. At this point, it is. There was so much time for them to put in a lot of action that would have made the climax of the scene even more vindicating. But this is finally where the episode gets interesting, and it's 50 minutes in. Sung-hyo follows Seokro as she leaves the house. We find out that Sung-hyo's dad has offered his wife an offer, which I can only assume is divorce. Sung-hyo invites Seokro to the theater the next day, and we find out his new client is her ex-fiance. The men, of course, are having a pissing match, and it's so unattractive on both ends. They're like going back and forth, being a distraction. Like, she came to the office to practice cooking, and they're just being annoying. This is when men should really learn to shut up. But Seokro finishes cooking, and she starts to get sweats. And she, struggling, and her ex-fiance helps her, and she leans into her ex-fiance because obviously her ex-fiance knows what's wrong with her. She goes to the hospital, and we find out she has stomach cancer. And this is where I know a lot of you tapped out. And I don't blame you. I don't blame you. We'll talk about this at the end of this episode about the buzzword rom-com and what people expect from rom-coms, but I think a lot of us are over the use of terminal illnesses in a lot of different K-dramas, but we'll talk about that at the end. I feel like it would have been much easier to stick with the motif of capitalism versus your dreams and the framing of South Korea, especially with its education and workplace culture, but the writer said, that's not dramatic enough. That is not dramatic enough for me. We need cancer. Because that's the only reason that Seokro would have left her life in the US and her fiance. It's because she had cancer. Anyway, needless to say that after this episode, I was like, do I have to watch episode 9 and 10? Do I have to? I procrastinated watching 9 and 10 forever. And you know why? Because episode 9 was 90 minutes. We should sue TVN for episodes being over 60 minutes long. What happened? Like, I appreciate K-drama in the world. I appreciate most Asian dramas in the world of 8-episode seasons in the US. But 90 minutes? 90? Oh, 90 minutes of nothing. That's where it's really upsetting. It's not like 90 minutes of real good action and emotion. It's 90 minutes of meh. So, like we do for most episodes, we open up with a flashback and we see Seokro receiving her proposal from her ex-fiance and her diagnosis from her doctor. Sung-hyo decides not to sit around and ask Moum what hospitals have ERs. He wants to go find Seokro. Seokro realizes that she wakes up at the hospital and realizes that she's at Sung-hyo's daddy's hospital and dips. She's like, oh, I got to go. And so she meets her ex outside. Sung-hyo pulls up and the men are still having their pissing contest. But the ex won because, and you probably, I feel like it's less impactful in English, but in Korean, he says, "Yeah, chi워야 되는데," and "yeah" is informal way of calling your same age peers, but "yeah" also is like something you would say for a child, but also the act of putting her to sleep is treating her like a child, and the ex goes, "She's not a child, she's a woman." I was like, hit him again. The ex won, and I was like, I needed that because Sung-hyo's attitude for the last 4 episodes has been gross. But ultimately, Seokro ends up going home with Sung-hyo, and then we get a flashback to Seokro telling her ex about her diagnosis when they were in the States. We learn that Seokro tried to tell her mother, but she got mad at her instead and didn't say anything at all. Like, she called her mom, and her mom was like, "Oh, I'm sending you kimchi," and she's like, "No, don't send kimchi, you know it spilled and I was embarrassed," and blah blah blah. I get it. She doesn't want her mother to worry. She doesn't want her mother to be upset. And honestly, as the oldest daughter, I understand her woes. I do understand. Alright. Sung-hyo and Moum meet at the batting cages, and he tells Moum that he feels like crap and that he's jealous. More, what I like to say, well, not selfish rhetoric. He is confronting a friend. He is seeking comfort in a friend for his emotions at this point, which is healthy, which is fine. Moum pokes around asking Sung-hyo if his heart beats when he thinks of Seokro, because her heart beating is when she's thinking of somebody else. And then more annoyance happens. I forgot to keep doing my annoyed meter. By episode 9, I'm definitely at a solid 8 of annoyance, right? Seokro's family starts to ignore her after her outbursts about them treating her differently, and look at them ignoring her and not talking to her and not communicating, which will get back to being a fundamental a reason of why Seokro is acting the way she's acting. Sung-hyo waits for her outside after she gets done fighting with her mother. Sukyo has stomach problems at the restaurant, but she avoids Sunkyo catching on by going to the bathroom. Dongjin's motivation now, suddenly, to me, is beating his sister. Once again, where was those seeds that could have been planted in much earlier episodes? Sunghyo's parents have a romantic moment, which I thought was really cute. Their washer door breaks for some reason, and the mom goes to step on the glass, and her husband catches her, and they spin around, and then she like puts a band-aid on his toe, and they like have ramen together. Oh, it's adorable. And I was like, I'm looking forward to them possibly falling in love again. Me, who hadn't seen the teaser for episode 11. Sunghyo returns to work and sees the pomegranate tree withering and rushes to the florist to save it. The ex is, of course, waiting for Sukyo after her cooking class and recommends her to go back overseas, which I thought was really selfish of him because she just got home. She's with her family. Why are you trying to take her back overseas again? The ex says he wants to be with Sukyo and proposes to her. We don't get to see her answer. We cut, and Sukyo takes Sunghyo to the park and tells him she still feels fluttering around her ex, and that her feeling for Sunghyo are that of a friend rather than a love interest, which I thought was, he calls it brutal, I call it necessary honesty. But I do think that he was correct in saying that Sukyo has no right to interpret his feelings for her. But also, is she wrong? Because the way he's treating her, it doesn't feel like he's madly in love with her. It feels like a child that is upset that he's not getting what he wants, which is an immediate answer, which is to be in love with her and love her outright and not have to deal with all of his emotions bottling up, which is just, I get it, you're upset, but like, he's fundamentally mean to her without any of the niceness. I get it, but he's like fundamentally mean to her, and it's the easiest way to win some over is to be nice and devoting and not condescending. But that's what he's doing. Mom is excited to see Yeonju's daddy as he brings snack to the station to say thank you for writing the article. And then Sunghyo's mom, I said the washer got broke earlier, right? And so the repairman comes over and he's like, oh, the spoon was in the washer. And mom sees the spoon and she's like, why was that in there? And she hides the spoon, so I guess there's some story there. Things get twisted at work for Sunghyo. Yeonju's daddy is starting to feel the flutters of like from Moem, which I thought, they make me smile. They're the best part of this drama right now. And then Sukyo's mom sees that something is bothering Sunghyo, and she brings him home to feed him. Sukyo is, of course, home, and they running to each other at the kitchen, and Sukyo takes the time to make sure Sunghyo understands that they can only be friends. And as she's walking away, because she's giving her answer before the expiration date, he's like, friendship? There's nothing like that anymore. You big baby. Like, you man-child. It is so upsetting to me, but I guess this is why they say that men and women can't be friends, which I don't believe. But, like, she doesn't want to love you in, like, a love interest kind of way, and you're like, well, our friendship is in the garbage. When you easily could have been like, okay, well, I need time before we go back to normal, which is the adult thing to do, but Sunghyo is obviously not an adult, as we see. We learn that Sukyo and her ex fought when she was at rock bottom. And this was also another scene that got a really big conversation on social media. But to me, this scene was normal, I think, for the patient and the caretaker, because they both had reached breaking points. We learned that he took off time for work for her. He was with her always. He wanted to go to this party. It was a party being held for his coworkers. She went there on suspicion, which is fine. Paranoia, I think, is a part of depression as well. But I think two things can be right. I think two things can happen at the same time, which I feel like a lot of people don't understand nowadays. Two things can be right at once. We can dislike the ex for being harsh towards Sukyo because he was downplaying her depression and accusing her of wanting to bring him into her depressive state when what she just needed was for him to be there. But we can also acknowledge that Sukyo was going through a minute of paranoia, and she made bad choices by like going to the party and being accusatory toward him when he's done nothing but care for her. And she still loves him, obviously, in the day. Like, if that scene had been as bad as I feel like some people are interpreting it, she would not have been happy to see him or protect him from her mother or constantly talking to him. I feel like they didn't have a big enough support system in the US, in my opinion. It felt like he was taking care of her by herself, which is hard for one person to do when somebody is sick. Of course, the person who has the illness is having it hardest. The person that has it the next hardest is the person that's taking care of them personally. And that person also needs a support system. So if he didn't have that and his way of getting some relief was going to that party, then it could have been more understanding. But it also doesn't seem like either of them were communicating that. So yes, what the ex said was disgusting. It was like, I can't believe you just said that. But at the same time, if we had only seen that scene of him and he had been neglectful to Sokro her entire illness, then she would not be talking to him the way she is in the present. So not liking him, very valid. But I don't think he's the devil. But she does tell her ex that she is always going to be worried about reoccurrence, that she's always going to be at Dora's death, that she's even going into remission, and she's going to always go in and out of bouts of depression that kind of comes along with chronic illnesses, I feel, for the most part. And so love is not in the picture right now for her, at least not with him, apparently. She reassures herself that declining Seung-hyo was the correct thing to do. Like, she's looking at herself in the mirror. It was the right thing to do. I feel like she realized that she was being a burden to her ex, so therefore she doesn't want to burden Seung-hyo either, or burden her family even. But we'll get to that in a second because I have a lot to talk about that. Yeondu's daddy has a business to attend to, so he leaves Yeondu with the Lavender Gang. The worker who had made a mistake at Seung-hyo's company wants to resign, and this is the only time to me that Seung-hyo feels like an adult, because he forgives him and says, it's okay, we just need to fix this as a team. Wish he was like that in his love life. Seung-hyo is basically down with the cold, and we see him remembering his mom getting into the car and with another man, and Sokro is the one who comes out to comfort him. If I didn't mention this before, baby girl who was playing young Sokro is so adorable. Her and her big old eyes. She's the cutest thing. She's a cute little button. Every time she's on my screen, I'm just like, adorable. Sokro goes to see sick Seung-hyo. Moem tells Yeondu's daddy she wishes Yeondu was her daughter. And there's like this really cute little back and forth. She's like, oh, that's not what I meant. Because if, you know, that's my daughter, then you have to be my husband. That's the implication. And then Yeondu's daddy sees a picture of her on the wall. He's like, oh, she's always been this cute. And then he's like, you know, because babies and children are cute. And they're extremely adorable and extremely awkward. And once again, this writer is capable of writing romantic comedic scenes. They're just not doing it for the main leads. I don't know why. Seung-hyo wakes up to find Sukro asleep at the foot of his bed. And like clockwork, Seung-hyo continues his childish rant to tell Sukro he will never contact her no matter what happens in the future. And then she leaves to go get, I don't know, water or something from the refrigerator, and Seung-hyo picks up her purse off the floor and pulls out an envelope and finds her diagnosis. Now, a lot of people were like, this is a red flag. Of course, I'm from the South in the United States. You don't ever go in a lady's purse. But I also think that this is a boundary that has always been broken with him, because Sukro has like just busted into his room without knocking. So I don't think it's a red flag, but it's not a red flag in their relationship. And then by far, we get the most unattractive scene from Seung-hyo, in my opinion. He asks her, are you sick? And she says, no, I was sick. And he immediately goes, how could you not tell me? Not you making this selfish about you. Not you making it selfishly about you. And then she immediately apologizes. Is apologetic. Oh, I hated her. I hated her so much. She was like, see, I shouldn't have told you. Now you're worried. And I'm like, what? She has cancer. Why are you making this about you? He follows her down the stairs. He keeps, saying the word cancer. And in the writer's favorite, at this point, overused trope, the mom shows up and hears Seung-suk's conversation, robbing Sokro of her own agency once again. And this is where I begin to feel like this plot is not nice to her. Boy, was I in store for episode 10, because this plot is brutal to this woman at this point. And I know people who watched episode 10 will be like, Tor, you're over exaggerating. Am I? Am I? Because I do think that, for me, in my opinion, this story is about Sokro. For this to be her story, this story is not nice to her whatsoever. Last episode. So, episode 10. We open the episode with gratefulness that Sokro's mom cannot read English, because she does find all of her medicine pill bottles in her room. Then we go right back to the scene that ended episode 9 with Sokro's mom finding out, hugging her, all that good stuff. At first, her mother was comforting her. She's like, oh, we need to go to the hospital. But then Sokro says, I'm not sick anymore. It happened 3 years ago. I'm okay. And her mother immediately turns her into a sinner for not telling her, and I hate it. I think this is the consequences of her own actions, because Sukro has obviously been raised as the eldest daughter who is perfect and who doesn't make mistakes and is independent on her own. Why would she immediately tell her mother? Why would she? She was terrified in episode 1 and 2 to even tell her mother that she broke off her engagement with her fiance. What makes you think she would want to communicate her terminal illness? Also, a lot of people keep their terminal or chronic illnesses to themselves until they're ready to tell somebody else. That should not be done on anybody else's time but the person who is sick. Does this plot take that into account? No. Or the plot is taken into account. The characters definitely don't take it into account. They go back next door to their home. She tells dad and Dongjin, and then she rushes into her room. She sees Sokro's scar, and then mom goes into this speech where she's talking about her daughter just thinks she's better than us. She didn't tell us. She didn't want to tell us because she's better than us, and all this other stuff. And it's like, it's such an awful speech, and I hate that Sokro had to hear that. Everyone is selfish when it comes to her, which is why, to me, it's so easy. Once again, it's so easy to make Sung-hyo a really good male lead. Imagine if Sung-hyo was the only one around Sokro that wasn't making her illness about himself. In my head, a down bad man to me would have been like, Appa. She goes, non 아파? 얼마나 아파? She goes, 얼마나 아파? 얼마나 아팠어? 옆에 있지 못해서 미안. 내가 뭘 하면 돼? He could say all of these things and be by her side and be the only person around her who is not making her feel like a selfish and horrible human being. But the story is like, nope, we're going to continue on the man-child thing and you're going to have to love it. You're going to have to see all of this the childish attitude of Sung-hyo, and that's who he is. And that is our main character. And that is who she's going to fall in love with. It. What? We'll get to Sung-hyo's characterization. More of it later. So, mom goes to play the drums, Dongjin is sitting on the couch, dad goes outside to smoke. But everyone is in tears. Mom starts to think about all the hurtful stuff she has said to Sokro since she has returned. This was also a very good scene. But once again, the subtitles on Netflix take the sting out of that scene because they translate the mother crying for her own mother. She's like, Oma! And they translate that as my goodness instead of her being like, Mom, oh my god, my daughter, what do I do? And if you look at the behind the scenes for that episode, the actress actually mentions that. So yeah, do better, Netflix. Sung-hyo's mom asks if he really didn't know, and he remembers, she's like, you went on a business trip 3 years ago. You sure you didn't know? And he remembers when he had a trip to the States and he saw Sokro with her fiance, he didn't approach them. Sung-hyo then began ignoring Sokro's communication after that, like the baby he is. And this is why people think men and women can't be friends, because the minute she was emotionally unavailable on a more intimate level, he was like, oh, I don't need to talk to you anymore. Like, y'all have been friends for life. She wished you happy birthday, you can respond to that. Like, anyway, Sokro also loses the chance to tell Moem. Look at that, taking her agency away from her again because Moem overhears her mom and Sung-hyo's mom talking about Sokro having cancer. But Moem is the only friend that matters because she goes in, she's like, why didn't you tell me? But she's like, she just says, you've done well. You did good. You got through this and I'm proud of you. And I was like, huh. But this is where I was starting to feel that this drama, even though it's Sokro's story, is not nice to her at all. And I guess there is no law within storytelling that says you have to be nice to your main character, but as a person who is writing, as a viewer who is watching and rooting for the main character, you think that the plot would do stuff that would also root for the main character. She has never gotten to divulge her own medical information from her mouth to anybody that matters to her. She didn't get to do it to her parents. She didn't get to do it to her best friend. She didn't get to do it to Sung-hyo's dad. Like, every chance this drama had to let Sokro tell everybody about her own diagnosis, they took it away from her. And I don't know why. Sung-hyo goes to his dad to ask about Sokro's condition, and the dad doesn't disclose anything. He says, just bring her to me, I'll make sure she's okay. The Lavender Gang comforts Sokro's mom because she is blaming herself for all of this. I do not blame her for Sokro getting cancer. People get, cancer is one of the most aggressive and deadliest illnesses ever. And so it just pops up in people randomly all the time. I do not think that Sokro's parents are the reason for that, but I do blame them for not having an open channel of communication with their own child, which is why they're in the situation they're in. Mom is walking home. Yeondu's daddy startles her, and she ends up flipping him, which is like a really good tension breaker for this episode. He asks her why she's crying, and she opens up, with a friend of a friend story, and we find out that Yeondu's mom passed away from a car accident and Yeondu had to have major surgery. And then Moem says it's okay to cry, and they kiss, which I wasn't expecting. That was not on my bingo card, but it was perfect. It was a really good kiss. It was the most romantic scene out of the entire story so far. I feel like I'm enjoying the second lead couple story more because it's basic, and honestly that's what I want from most rom-coms. I feel like romance stories is a genre with the same recycled plot, but you make it interesting in how you do the romance. But you know, we'll get into the buzzword stuff at the end of the episode. Mom goes to meet her coworker. I can't lie, their conversation kind of gets flirty, but it never gets over the line. But we find out that her boss had asked her to take off time, and it turns out that she's being forced to resign and retire. Soon Sok finally meet Sokro, obviously seeking comfort and a place to complain without feeling guilty about her decision not to tell the people around you. And here we go again with Sung-hyo telling her that she's a coward and pathetic for hurting the people that love her because, you know, you're hurting her own self by not telling others. And like, of course, again, Sung-hyo then makes it about himself. He goes like, you didn't give me the chance to be there for you when you were there for me, and I'm upset about that. And I'm like, you just learned that she had cancer. You just learned the woman you love had cancer and went through it by herself, and your first string of thought is to berate her, is to tell her that she's an awful person for hurting her mother and father, which was what she was afraid of doing in the first place by telling them that she had cancer, instead of being like, I understand why you did that, but you really shouldn't have. You were not being nice to yourself, and no matter how scared you were of your mom and dad being, you know, falling in on themselves out of sadness, you should have told us. There's a much gentler way to do that. But of course, with Sung-hyo's characterization, he doesn't do that. And this was a great chance for him to be a pillar of support for her. And he doesn't do that. And I understand what the writer's trying to do. They are trying to bully Sokro into loving herself more. And I want you to know that a child that has been held to a unreasonable standard will never know how to place themselves first without therapy. They will never know how to place themselves first without therapy. You cannot bully somebody into emotional healing. And that is what the story is trying to do with Sokro, with Sung-hyo, being like, well, he's mean to her because he loves her, because he wants her to do better for herself. And I'm sitting here like, there is a gentler, more appealing, more palpable way of doing that. And the story at every flipping turn refuses to do it. And I don't know if that's a problem with characterization at this point, or plot, or writing. It's probably both. Anyway, what's even worse is that the ex come and co-signs his behavior, saying, oh, I should have been more honest to her. I should have yelled, I should have screamed. I was too focused on her becoming healthy. And I'm like, his honesty does not have to be wrapped in a vindictive and condescending tone and just playing out in no regard for Sokro's feelings on the other side. He just says what he wants and be like, I'll make it up later because I'm still gonna be by her side. And the story wants us to accept that kind of behavior as loving and endearing, and it's annoying. It is annoying. So mom and dad reflect on their bad parenting and are crying over their daughter suffering alone. Now, I didn't clock this the first time I watched the episode, but Sokro overhears this. Here's the plot. Again, at every turn of this story, of this episode, refuses to allow Sokro even an ounce of the beginning of healing. If this character was so terrified of her parents finding out that she was sick, why does she constantly have to hear their suffering? They were up there by themselves. There was no need for Sokro to overhear that conversation. And I know they probably put that in there because, oh, this is the reason why she left home without her phone. She was already up to hear with her emotions, especially after having that conversation with Sung-hyo. She didn't have to then again be hurt by her parents over there blaming themselves for her having cancer. My biggest question for that was like, why is the script punishing her for not relying on the people that were never there to support her in the first place? She literally went off 2 episodes ago about how she was treated differently. Her mother even admits that she made her child too hyper independent. Of course she wasn't going to tell them that she got cancer. Of course she still knows she loves them. I don't understand why the plot has to continually throw that in her face, especially when the plot is also acknowledging that it's wrong. So the next day, mom avoids doing her daddy. Sokro's mama sees the notification that she got her biopsy results, so she goes to find Sokro, but she's not there. We find out that the ex told Sung-hyo about Sokro's depression. This is where I was like done. I was like, I'm ready to throw the story in the garbage. Who is he to tell Sung-hyo about personal medical information of Sokro? Sung-hyo's her best friend. Cool. You told her parents she had depression so they can be, on alert in the future. Why? Oh, it's so irritating. Sukro's mom calls Sung-hyo to go. When Sukro goes missing, he finds her at the beach without her phone. Sung-hyo immediately gets upset and berates Sukro for not telling him about her being depressed. Once again, making it about himself and not making it about, well, maybe she was depressed and had no one to talk to and could have immediately been like, I'm sorry, I was not there when you were depressed. Right? He then picks her up and walks them into the water. She's asking, why are you yelling at me? I'm the one who's sick. He says, I'm not yelling at you. I'm yelling at me for not seeing the signs, for not all this other stuff. And now we have to feel guilty over him for feeling like trash. Barf. I want to throw up. Nothing about that is attractive to me. Absolutely nothing about Sung-hyo for the last 4 episodes has been remotely attractive at all. I'll take that back. 2 episodes. I won't go back that far. Why are you making this about you? If you want to yell at yourself, yell at you. You don't have to yell at her. And then she finally gets her like emotional outburst in this scene of them standing in the ocean. And I was very upset because she as a character says, I wasn't able to tell anyone, which is part of the most painful part, right? I wasn't able to tell anyone. And this story, instead of allowing her to heal some and let her be the one to tell her parents or even like let her tell Momo, took that away from her and caused her more pain. And instead of us sitting in that pain and try to reconcile it, because we could reconcile it easily, Sung-hyo being like, I'm sorry your parents had to overhear it, they overheard because of me, anything like that. The script doesn't do any of that. She's just hurt and in pain, and in the next scene we're okay enough to make a call to Sung-hyo's dad to figure out the results of the biopsy, which are thankfully negative. And Sung-hyo hugs her because he's happy, which is supposed to be romantic. I'm over it at this point. But Sung-hyo's daddy goes to have lunch with his wife and overhears her coworkers talking about the rumors of her and her boss, and he walks away again instead of walking up to his wife, who is receiving flowers from her boss because she probably most likely got fired. And we know that as viewers. He doesn't know that, but still. His avoidant personality of just like non-confrontational is the opposite of Sung-hyo, but at the same time the same, because Sung-hyo says stuff that he doesn't mean, which makes him confrontational. Anyway, Sung-hyo takes Sokuro to a surprise party thrown by the family and Moen at the tteokbokki place. Of course, this was Sung-hyo's idea. Mom and dad give touching speeches, and the ex watches from afar as Sokuro gains her smile back among family and friends. Sung-hyo's daddy returns and asks mom for a divorce. Ex calls Sokuro and bids farewell. And they end on a good note. And then I started screaming when this scene started. I paused and cackled for like 5 minutes straight. 5 minutes straight, because I was flabbergasted at what was happening. Sung-hyo, our lovely man-child Sung-hyo, pulls Sokuro out of her bed in her pajamas, being like, we gotta go somewhere. She's like, I haven't even washed my hair. Where are we going? He pulls this woman out of her bed to go to the airport to see her ex off. I don't have words for that, right? Because he's like, me first. And he walks up to the ex. He walks up to the ex and be like, I don't remember all the dialogue, but he's just like, I can only give you a few minutes. Don't get too close. And I'm like, who are you? Who are you? The man who confessed to her because she hasn't confessed back. On the other hand, she's declined twice. And I know the writer wrote this scene because it's supposed to be charming and alluring of Sung-hyo because he's thinking of Sakura first. And I'm like, if you were thinking of her first, you would have let her change her clothes before y'all got to the airport. She's seeing this man off. This might be the last time she ever sees the man that she was going to marry, the man that helped her through her cancer treatment, and you don't let her change into a pair of jeans? Are you kidding me? Do you know how bad the traffic is to get from whatever part of the city you are to the airport? You could have gave her 3 minutes to change. And he talks about himself being immature, and I'm like, I'm glad you're self-aware, but when will his character grow? Because we are 10 episodes in and I have seen no character growth. Anyway, in her pajamas, Sokuro and her fiance have their goodbyes, and then Sung-hyo, in another supposedly cool male lead fashion, takes off his suit jacket and throws it over Sokuro's head, and they just stand there and she cries watching her ex leave. And that is the end of episode 10. Oh, Jesus be a fence. Jesus be a fence in the river of Jordan in the middle of the desert. If I wasn't over this drama at episode 6, I was definitely over it by episode 10. But I am going to continue watching it. I know, I said I'm the drama snob. I drop dramas that do not bring me joy, but I'm enjoying critiquing this. Especially when you see a lot of the opinions on the internet. I'm like, we must be watching 2 totally different shows, babe. Because to me, the things that you are seeing and the things that I are seeing, the things that we are interpreting are different. So I'm enjoying critiquing this drama. I might not be enjoying watching it, but the critiques are fun. So that being said, at episode 10, my annoyed meter is like at an 11. Sung-hyo is unattractive as a male lead. This plot is not nice to his female character. There is a better story in here, but it is covered up by muck and unnecessary dialogue and scenes that do not give enough action to the plot that where it's interesting. It's too long an episode. It should be 60 minutes an episode. I don't know why it's so long an episode. There's no need for it. That being said, I do want to talk about some things that happened over the few weeks on social media. There was a big time, I want to say like once we found out she had cancer, everybody was like, this is not our rom-com. Rom-coms don't have terminal illnesses. This is not what we signed up for. So we're going to talk about genre confinements. So yeah, K-drama Twitter's buzzword is rom-com for the month. Everyone has expectations of what a genre is supposed to be and are disappointed when certain aspects of a show do not reach that. And I think that Love Next Door suffers from mediocre writing rather than not fitting the criteria for a rom-com. Because, is it even tagged rom-com? Because at the end of the day, it's giving you romance. It's giving you comedy. It's advertising. It is giving you what is advertised, that it is a romantic comedic story. On the other hand, it is a poorly written romantic comedic story. So I think those are 2 different things. I think that what it did not advertise is the chronic illness, which most people don't associate with rom-coms. I think that we are used to having, especially in K-dramas, where chronic illness is the focus of the plot. And so you walk into a story knowing what you're signing up for, which is accompanied with the genre norms of melodramas and healing shows where there's like a lot of sadness and a lot of emotional scenes. And I don't think that's what people signed up for when they started watching Love Next Door, which is a valid critique. I know that sometimes chronic illness stories can trigger people, so I definitely think if you drop this drama because of that, it's definitely understandable. And this drama does advertise itself as comedy, romance, and family. I think this is more of a family romantic story more than it is a rom-com. If I was watching this drama off camera, I would have dropped it. Not because of the chronic illnesses, but because the writing is not good. The drama does not do a good job to try to get you to stay around for more than 20 minutes. Let alone 78. The rise to opposition in every 2 episodes arc is low stakes in a way that does not utilize the talent of the script. It feels slightly superficial or not dramatic enough. Like, it wants to be dramatic by being like, ooh, cancer, ooh, ex-fiance, ooh, childhood lovers, ooh, single father, ooh, all this stuff, but it's not utilizing any of those themes or characteristics of the story in a well thought out manner. Having the exes show up in episode 5, it's like, babe, we got 6 episodes left. Why are the exes here now? And I get it, the exes aren't toxic exes, but those are supposed to be like, they're supposed to show up and cause drama in a way that feels palpable, and they just kind of show up to relay information, which is kind of unsatisfying, to say the least. A mutual of mine also mentioned that if you don't consume art that doesn't go the way you want it to, you never broaden your horizon or taste when it comes to media consumption. Sierra, I love you. I love listening to her speak. And I definitely agree with that. There are definitely shows that I love that have plot points and other aspects that don't make sense to me, but I finish them anyway because I want to see where the plot goes. That's what I'm doing for Love Next Door. The story is not going the way I want, but I'm gonna finish it because it's a good discussion to have. But I also am of the camp that in our time and Lord of Savior of working 9 to 5s that try to be 8 to 7s, to drop anything that doesn't bring you joy. And for me, for a long time, dramas were a place of joy and happiness, so I didn't want to watch anything that was completely sad or tragic. But I think there's a fine line between demanding better from your media and then demanding a checklist of moments that you got in like one good hit drama that you really love, and then expecting that to be replicated in every single rom-com that you watch from there on. Rom-com ultimately is a barrel of, I won't say garbage, I will say a barrel of recycled plot lines. And so writers are going to do what they think is best to make it more attractive, even if that is to the downfall of the plot. So that being said, I'm very confused on this confusing plot. I feel like the story no longer knows what it wants to be. Is it Sokuro's story about finding her dreams after running on autopilot for decades? Or is this Sunghyun's love story for pursuing the woman that he has loved his whole life? Because it feels like the latter, which is not the most interesting story in this writing. I feel like the main character is Sokuro, and if the main character is Sokuro, then we should be focused on her healing. And I feel like we're not doing that. That being said, I am gonna watch the other 6 episodes, and I will be doing a recap for you. You're welcome. I don't know what's gonna happen in the other 6 episodes. We've had the exes, we've gotten the cancer, the wedding has been called off, he's confessed, they're gonna fall in love, the family's gonna find out, then what else? Then what else? Because we have what, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. What else is gonna happen after that? I don't know what else could happen. We'll see if somebody gets pregnant. We'll see if somebody, I don't know. I don't think we're gonna get a death. I think somebody might get, I don't know, fatally hurt. That being said, I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know what you think of Love Next Door in the comments below. Do you think this is a rom-com? I mean, in the basics that it is romantic and comedy, I don't think it's a rom-com when we think of K-drama rom-coms. I just think it's a romance story that is confused on who its main lead character is. But thank you for watching. Leave a like and a comment. Don't forget to subscribe. And I will see you in 2 weeks with the next 6 episodes. Bye-bye.